Good morning. Welcome to Fantasy Sports today on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish, along with George Kurtz. We're getting you ready for the upcoming week in fantasy football. George, great to be with you here once again. Coming off a wild Thursday night, we got plenty of games to get to. By the way, early game on Sunday morning. They're going to play a game, I believe, in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. So, got to set your lineup. And I got to tell you, we'll get into all the headlines and everything like that. But I was one of those people that I didn't have to look up to see if I was playing against Jamar Chase. Because in one of my leagues, I had Jamar Chase. That's a good way to start the show here on a Saturday.
It's the, I guess, the worst thing and the best thing, right? Because you see these points that they brought up on Thursday, right? Burrow and Chase, and you're like, oh my God. And I'm in 9 leagues, and I'm like, I know I have Burrow in 1. I don't think I have Chase in any. And Burrow in only one. I'm like, oh God, you look up the scores. I'm down 75 points in 1 league. I'm like, all right, that one's toast. My home points league, my brother has both. He already has 100 points. I'm like, okay, this week is toast there. You just hope you come out on the plus side, right? That you have Chase and Burrow in more leagues than you're going up against them. And I haven't even checked every league, by the way. The good news, by the way, and I'll look at the bright side of it, a league where I was 4 and 5, I did have Burrow, or I do have Burrow. So it's a really nice start for the week. I do need a win there.
All right, so let's get started. We're going to do a lot of Thursday night talk, of course, because it was one of the biggest fantasy games of the season, let's be honest. But let's get to the upcoming weekend, too. We got a lot of injuries, good and bad. So good news is Christian McCaffrey, first time in our fantasy football lives. Let's be clear. I've been playing fantasy football for 30 years. George has been playing fantasy football for 30 years. We've never had the number 1 overall pick miss the first 2 months of the season. It's never happened. This is the first time that the number 1 pick didn't play for 9 weeks. Christian McCaffrey is back this week. Get him in your lineups if you are still alive, by the way, in fantasy football. A couple of quarterback issues to get to here. Dak Prescott is out. He's not going to play this week. As we're discussing this right now, I'm just simply not sure that we're going to see him the rest of the season. I'm not sure we're going to see Trevor Lawrence the rest of the season. We simply don't know. Mac Jones is going to start for Jacksonville. Chuba Hubbard signs an extension. Mahomes should be okay. So let's talk about the 2 quarterbacks here. And by the way, in my league, George, not that everybody wants to hear about my league, I got Prescott, I got Lawrence. Those are my 2 quarterbacks in my dynasty league. So what did I do? Probably what you guys did. I grabbed a 2 quarterback league. No one's available. So I grabbed Cooper Rush, and that's all I got in my 2 quarterback league. George, I have no other quarterback this week.
Yeah, luckily I don't have Dak anywhere, so I didn't have to go through that. Cooper did go for an exorbitant. How much did he go for in your league, percentage-wise?
$1.
Wow. In my home league, once again, these are both super flex leagues. He went for 27 of 100. So the guy spent $27.
I was the only one to bid. Yeah,
that is surprising in a super flex because, as you said, I think Dak is gone for at least a month. So you're getting at least 4 games of Cooper Rush. And there's a chance what do they call it? He has a slight avulsion of his hamstring, which means it tore away a little bit. He may have to undergo surgery, and if he does, well, then his season's over. And let's face it, the Cowboys' season's over. I know technically it's not. They're 3 and 5. Anybody think they're winning Sunday against Philadelphia? Probably not. You're 3 and 6. And it's probably just going straight downhill from there. So I wonder even if he doesn't need the surgery, would you bring him back in December? If he's not completely 100%. I don't know how much sense this makes. I'm really shocked, though, Craig. I don't think he should have gone for $27. Maybe a happy medium in there. I think you did a great job getting him for 1. Cooper Rush.
I had no quarterback. I mean, maybe there's some people who could speak to this. I don't want to bore people with my team, of course, but it's like, I've already made the playoffs just because I'm in some wacky league, but I'm going to go into the playoffs. I have to make a trade because I only, again, have Dak and Lawrence if they're both out for the year. My 3rd quarterback was just taking a flyer on Aiden O'Connell. He's out for the year too. So yeah, so I have Cooper Rush. Like I'm sure in those super flex leagues, if people are like reasoning with me, Mason Rudolph is available. So I almost hit that button, George. And now Levis has been announced that he is playing this week. So, I don't think a lot of people are in this scenario. There's a lot of people who are saying, wait a second, I only play in 12-team leagues. I only need 1 quarterback. And you're very lucky because if not, you're going to be up against it going into the week as well. Also, one other quick note from Friday, Michael Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts. He was announced that he is going to missed this week as well. Expectations for McCaffrey, George. I mean, he's obviously a must start. Like, nobody has two good running backs better than McCaffrey. If I told you that McCaffrey got this week 11 carries, 55 yards, 3 catches, and 30 yards, am I high? Am I low? I may be high anyway, but am I high? Am I low? Where do you think I'm at?
So you're not giving him a touchdown. I'm going to say you're low. All right. I don't expect him to have a big week. If I'm going to put the over under, it's probably going to be like 16 and a half fantasy points and a PPR. So that's where I'm going to put I don't think it'll be his normal week where he might get, 25, 30 because they're going to go bananas. It is a good matchup against Tampa Bay. I just don't think he's going to have his normal workload. Right. They should be able to beat Tampa Bay without, him touching the ball 30 times, I would think. I'm assuming once again that they're telling the truth, that the Achilles, there's no pain there. They're taking it easy with them. So I'm going to say you're a little low. I don't think you're much though. I'm just going to give him a touchdown. So take those numbers you brought up and I'll throw a score in there too.
Got it. I'm just worried they use Mason at the goal line, which is possible. All right, speaking of the goal line, the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday night had the ball at the goal line, more or less. They decided to go for 2, and that was the story of Thursday Night Football. It shouldn't be. This was a great game. 69 points, as you see, scored there. Thursday Night Football, for me, George, I let it breathe. And that, what that means is I live my life, and then I check back in the second quarter and say, is this a game that I want to turn on tonight? And boy, I'm glad that I did. I mean, back and forth and back. No one could stop anybody. I mean, look, Cincinnati, George, hasn't stopped anybody all season. So I'm not surprised Lamar Jackson threw 4 touchdowns and threw for 290 passing yards. What I guess I'm surprised at this point is that the Ravens have become a must play against in fantasy. Like, pretty much out of, 9-10 games they've played this season, you can literally play all your offensive pieces against them all season long. I don't know what is going on. They used to be a very good defensive team, but sort of embarrassing in that second half.
And this has been going on all season long as well. They can't stop anybody. All right, we knew this was going to be a high-scoring game. Most of us were on the over and had a million props in the game. So it lived up to expectations. It was a fun game here. Whether or not you believe they should have gone for a 2-point conversion, you certainly can't really argue against it. That make them. You could certainly be upset about the penalty calls. And that I think maybe it was our Warren Sharp who pointed out there were 3 separate face mask penalties on that final play. I think somebody circled each one of them. Not to mention the holding call they didn't call either. So not a great night for the refs here, but a fantastic game. Like I said, if you started somebody in this game and you weren't happy, I guess the Mike Gesicki guy wouldn't be happy, right? He didn't know how the big game we had, but Zay Flowers, that's the guy who's probably most upsetting to people. What do you have?
Wasn't
7
horrible
fantasy
though. Wasn't horrible.
7? 7?
Could be a 0.
Well, yes, it could have been a 0, but still, it's 7. 7. No, so I think I'm a little upset here about if I'm, and I have Zay Flowers in the league. So I am a little upset about 7 freaking points.
No, I understand. It's just, I'm trying to look. I know, George, you're not the bright side guy. I'm the bright side. Derrick Henry, 68 yards. He ended up scoring a touchdown. So you got what you wanted there. Chase Brown has really taken over as the running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, Herbert didn't even basically sniff the field. And then let's look at Chase. I mean, this is an all-time game for fantasy, right? 11 catches, 264 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, his best game ever, George.
I think it's the third or fourth best ever in fantasy as far as for a wide receiver. So it's just unbelievable. And isn't it a little weird that the final play is not designed to go to him? The 2-pointer? I know they ran a lot of short plays. Maybe they didn't have anything left that Baltimore hadn't seen. Although I think you could run the same play, by the way, during a game. I think it's all right. But I wonder if that was the case there. But I was surprised it wasn't designed to go to Chase, who had a monster game here. Baltimore just has no answers for Jamar Chase.
No, definitely not. All right. And they play the Steelers a couple times coming up next. But speaking of this show coming up next, we'll go through some of the underperformers in fantasy. Don't go away.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. Let's take a look at some of the underperformers and overperformers from Week 9 and see if we get a little bit of a bounce back. We'll start off, George, with a quarterback from the Arizona Cardinals. We've got Kyler Murray, 154 yards and 6 rushing yards? Really? Last week for Kyler Murray? This is sort of unexpected. Goes against the Jets this coming week. I mean, I expect it can't get worse, right? Like, this is the worst game for Murray this season. Fair?
If you watched last week's game, the reason he had no points is because Chicago couldn't stop Connor. They couldn't stop DeMarcano. They couldn't stop anybody who was running the ball for Arizona. Murray didn't need to do anything. All right, I have Kyler Murray in a league or two. He just didn't need to do anything. So that's why Murray had a bad game here. It's unfortunate, but that they didn't need him to throw the ball, and he didn't need to run, I guess, to put his body on the line here. I have to think this week, Craig, he will need to do both against the Jets. I think it's going to be a good game. I think he'll rebound. I don't think he's going to have a great game, mind you. So I think he's more of a quarterback 2 this week, which, let's face it, after Burrow and Lamar Jackson on Thursday, you already got 2 guys are going to be in the top 10. So I think he's more of a quarterback 2 this week. But, yeah, I think he can't do much worse than 6 fantasy points.
No. And speaking of underperformers, you're going to get a 0 if you put Michael Pittman in your lineup this week. He's out. Last week, pretty much a 0 too. 1 catch, 14 yards. So, George, let's dive a little into Indianapolis here because – I mean, we saw a performance from Joe Flacco that reminded me of Denver Broncos Joe Flacco, you know? Like, I just think that we maybe not me, but we as a group may have overestimated what his impact is going to be on the Indianapolis Colts. If he plays against any good defense, George, I don't think he's going to succeed. I'm very concerned. I know the Colts have covered and they've played close in a lot of these games, but I'm starting to think maybe they should put Richardson back in and just ride this out.
I think you're right. I think everything you said is correct. Listen, I understand Flacco can make your wide receivers better right now. Like, he'll get the ball to them more than Richardson will. But you have to ask yourself, are you winning the Super Bowl with Flacco? Are you going to a championship game? Are you winning a playoff game with Flacco? Probably not. Super Bowl, definitely not. Right? So what's the point here? When you drafted Richardson, you had to know that he was a project. Right, he was not a finished, he's ready to go now. No, we all knew he was a project. That's why he was a risk, a gamble. And now to bench him after pretty much 10 NFL games, not even that really, because he's missed a couple of those games, not even 10 full NFL games, seems silly to me. The only way he's going to get better is by playing. Now, if you're telling me by him watching Flacco that he'll get better that way, okay, you could sort of convince me of that. But if that's what you're doing here, fine. But if you're benching him for the sake of benching him, this makes no sense. Flacco, yes, technically does make your team better now, but he's not bringing you anywhere you need to be. And if this just holds Richardson back, this makes no sense to me.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's take a look at an overperformer here, and I think it's fair to say that 2 years ago this would have not been an overperformer, but based on the season that he's had, Travis Kelce had 14 catches for 100 yards on 16 targets. Kelce went from I think like the 13th or 14th tight end in fantasy to like 6 in 1 week with all the catches and all the yards. I don't know. Maybe Hopkins makes Kelce better. I was actually shocked that Hopkins played as well as he did with them. So maybe this is going to help him.
Theoretically, it should, right? Because you got Xavier Worthy running the deep routes. So it takes those safeties out of the way, right? Hopkins more of the intermediate routes, and then Kelce the shorter routes, right? At this point in his career. And maybe he's not the focus anymore, Greg, right? Maybe he's not the focus anymore. But I also wonder this. Maybe he wasn't the focus because he was having such a bad year. And, now he's back. So now he'll be the focus again. Maybe Tampa Bay wasn't covering him. Or maybe Tampa Bay just has no secondary, which also could be a case here. And sure enough, they were terrible as far as adjustments were concerned. You saw that, or you're seeing the graphic there. 14 receptions, 16 targets. Maybe you should cover the man. It could be that as well here. It could be a combination of all three. But I do think Hopkins helps his team, yeah.
All right, Chuba Hubbard gets a long-term extension. That was a big surprise this week. Running back getting paid, George, in this day and age, in this economy. Chuba Hubbard, 72 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm here to tell you, I probably could have made a trade for him earlier in the season, and I screwed up. I didn't do it. I was like, not a non-believer, but just sort of like thinking Carolina was just going to be so bad, and we've seen Ramondre Stevenson, and we've seen Javonte Williams playing on bad teams with goose eggs. I know Javonte had 1 good game all year, but this guy Chuba Hubbard, every time he plays, doesn't matter if the Panthers lose by 60 or if they win by 10, he's involved in the offense. So I don't even know that he's an overperformer at this point. I'm not sure that he's an RB1, but he's close. He's playing every week. He seems to be scoring almost every week too.
Yeah, that's really the argument, right? Is he an RB1 or an RB2? He's right on that borderline there. Everything you said is true. And I wouldn't have traded for him early in the year either because those same thoughts that you're having here. Oh, it's Carolina. How many points are they going to score? They're going to be behind, so they're not going to run, that sort of thing. So there were a lot of negatives there, but he's getting the job done. I wonder if the success of Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, I'm not saying Hubbard's in that category, but the success of those running backs and how maybe it's returning now in the NFL is helping someone like Hubbard get paid because these guys are valuable. There aren't too many of these guys that are in the NFL. So I wonder if we're going to see a little bit of a change here over the next couple of years in the NFL, which also would change things for fantasy also.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess we'll see with this next group of running backs to see what they end up doing. Najee Harris is a good example of that with Pittsburgh. You just have it's hard to judge. It's based on the team, it seems like. That works for them, George, but you know what really works against some of these guys? I'll give you a perfect example. Kareem Hunt. Like, Kareem Hunt's rushing for 100 yards, George, every game. This guy was just sitting on the couch, I don't know. I feel like it's a nice gesture. I'm never really comfortable with what the Panthers are doing. I'm not sure that they know either.
Oh, no argument there. I'm not sure they know either. Let Young play. Let's see what he can do here. Maybe he can get him out of his funk with Carolina's what? Bottom 5 organization as far as how they run things. And they certainly haven't done anything this year to make
in the NFL. Oh yeah. Near the bottom.
Carolina, Dallas.
I thought you meant all across sports. I was like, well, maybe, but in the NFL, definitely. Yeah, no, in the NFL, definitely. Yeah. Raiders too. Cowboys. Yeah, definitely.
Raiders, Cowboys, Cleveland, Carolina, Giants might be close here.
I feel like the Jaguars mean well, but I'm just not sure that the results are there sometimes.
Jaguars are certainly in this conversation. Saints. There are a lot of badly run NFL teams. Yeah,
I would agree. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick timeout. We got to hit the waiver wire. I know there are a lot of you out there who need pickups for this week. We got you covered next.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Let's hit the waiver wire in fantasy football. Craig Mish, George Kurtz on Fantasy Sports Today as we take a look at players that could be available in your fantasy league. And so we will dive into some of the potential names. We'll start off at wide receiver. This is a player, George, that seems like he's probably been on, if you're playing in a 12-team league, I'm going to guess he's been on 3 teams this year. Quentin Johnson of the Chargers. And the reason why is not because he's a bad player, and his stats are actually pretty good. 4 touchdowns, 282 yards. Problem is the Chargers go for days and weeks at a time without scoring a lot. They just keep handing off the ball to J.K. Dobbins. I feel like Quentin Johnson is really good in those blowout games, but in those close games, man, they just keep running the ball, and they win. What am I going to say? I mean, the Chargers are winning under Harbaugh. They're going to win 10 games. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to lose in the first round. Is Quentin Johnson somebody you would pick up and start right now?
Pick up, no problem. Right, I do think he has some value here. I think this week he's a wide receiver 3 flex guy. What'd you say? He's valuable in blowouts. Playing Tennessee, this could be another blowout, Craig. My problem with Quentin is going to be this. You already sort of hinted at this. Without the touchdown, I don't know what you're going to get. You know, it's 4 for 60.
18 catches.
You know, right. You're not going to get much. He did miss a couple of games, so let's keep that in mind. It's not divisible by 9. But he's going to get 3-4 catches. You need that touchdown. You need touchdown deodorant, or else you're not going to like what you see here. But this game could be a blowout. I think, what you say, 3 teams? Let's put it this way. He'll be on more than 1 team for the rest of the season, too. So here you're starting him this week. You're probably releasing him 3 weeks from now.
Right.
You know, you're starting because you have buys, right? All the Green Bay Packer guys are on buy. The Seattle guys are on buy. So good for now, but we're going to move on eventually.
Yeah, he's no Anders Carlson. That's what you're saying. All right, Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills. Ray Davis is only 34% owned. I feel like this guy has to be owned in a lot more leagues, George, and you don't have to ever play this guy. But this is the perfect player to just stash and wait. Now, I am not rooting for anyone to get hurt in life, okay? But if something were to happen to James Cook, like this guy, I think this guy would be, I'm going to say it, better than James Cook. I think this guy is really good, but until that happens, if that doesn't happen, he comes in, he gets the ball immediately, rushes for like 25 yards, they take him out of the game, you don't see him again.
I think he needs to be rostered. I do. So he's like Tyler Algier of Atlanta and a couple of the backup running backs who they can, even if the starter's not hurt, I always starter plays, whatever, you'll get your smattering of points. Probably nothing, you may not get double digits, but a smattering of points. But if the starter does get hurt, you have a starting running back. Now, I understand the negatives against Ray Davis. They haven't had their bye week yet. That's in 2 weeks. All right, they play Indianapolis. No problem this week. Kansas City next week, probably not going to do much there. Kansas City's a really good defense. So that could be an issue. But I think he's someone who needs to be rostered. There has to be somebody in your league who needs him. You may not. Maybe you have 3-4 decent running backs, and you may have two guys just like him. Maybe you got Algier and some other backup. I get that, but I think it is a little off that he's not rostered in more leagues.
Yeah, under 20% in ESPN leagues too. All right, so this next one I would never recommend, but after watching the Dolphins play last week with Tua, I have no idea what's going on here. Jonnu Smith is now the main target for Tua Tagovailoa. When did this happen? Did Tua, while he was out for the last 4 or 5 weeks, sit down with Jonnu Smith and say, hey, as soon as I'm back, you're my guy? What happened to Tyreek Hill? What happened to Jalen Waddle? I know Waddle at the end of the game scored a touchdown. Great. He ran backwards 30 yards too. Jonnu Smith, I mean, maybe this is part of the healthy Tua plan. Get rid of the ball, throw it over the middle. If so, I want him.
Well, I think what you said at the end is very key there. Tua's always been an over-the-middle guy, right? Throwing outside the numbers unless his guys are wide open, something he doesn't do all that well or all that often here. So Jonnu Smith is somebody we've talked about over the years, Craig, that had some value. We just never seen it. Maybe in spurts, but we never really saw it. Maybe a little bit with Tennessee here. Yeah, I think he's in that same category as Zach Ertz, maybe Taysom Hill, Dalton Schultz, Ty Conklin, Freiermuth. All these guys are the same, So could they be a tight end one? Yeah, because they roll like in the 10 to 16 range for me. So they could be tight end ones at the end of the week or more high-end tight end twos, but someone to pay attention to. But I think generally you're probably nowadays more solidified in your tight ends.
All right. And finally, I'm 5-4 in one fantasy league with Breece Hall and no one else at running back. Literally no one. So Cam Akers was picked up by me, and I'm playing him this week. How pathetic am I? There's no one on the waiver wire. I can just keep picking up Tennessee running backs that I've never heard of if we want to do that. Well, I mean, there's no one there. I got to start this guy this week. This is horrible.
Not to mention he's someone you tore apart when we talked about him weeks ago.
I did.
And by the way, Craig was right. I think he had a touchdown the first week and nothing since.
So
good luck to you.
I'm like waiting for an injury report that doesn't exist to come out to pick up someone this week. Be right back.
Your main event, Tale of the Tape for Battle of the Giants. Francis Ngannou, 38 years of age. Reina Ferreira is 34. Francis standing 6 feet 4 inches tall. That's usually the bigger man, but tonight he'll face a man who is 6'8". Reina weighed in heavier, has the longer reach on arms and legs. Francis Ngannou in the gold and black. Reina Ferreira in the gray.
That lead hand, he's got to be cautious because that right hand is coming over the top. Oh! Gonna have to work tremendously hard to get Ngannou off him so he can get back, and he is unleashing on the front. Oh, he's out! He's out!
Trouble! And he's down! And he is done! The king has returned!
All right, a little game of hold or drop. So we did a little add drop. Maybe these are some players that you want to consider getting rid of to add somebody else, maybe a backup running back somewhere, backup receiver somewhere. And let's start off with, I think, a pretty easy open and shut case here. George, Dallas Cowboys made a trade to get another wide receiver, and they don't even have a quarterback, at least for the time being. Jalen Tolbert, who was a nice little stash at the beginning of the season and actually had a few games where he probably helped you, especially in daily fantasy if you played him. 353 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had he played with Dak the entire season, this would have been somebody like Michael Gallup a few years ago that we would have looked at next year and said, hey, maybe this is a player. But now we'll never know. Cooper Rush is starting. Dak is out. They added a receiver. This is the easiest drop as we begin for me. There's just no reason to own Jalen Tolbert.
I might push back on that a little bit. Mingo is not a worry now. I mean, all these good veteran receivers we see, that takes them a couple of weeks. Deontay Johnson had 1 catch Thursday night, which, by the way, another fantasy player probably ticked off some owners there. So Mingo's not really a threat to me for a while. And I don't listen. You want to kill this segment? Keep bringing up the Cowboys. And let my anger to show about the Cowboys trying to get 4th-round pick for Mingo, by the way, because I will flip out. I'm trying not to. Save that for another day here. Sure, whatever. Listen, am I dying to keep him? No. Am I starting him this week? Probably not. That being said, the Cowboys should be trailing most games, if not all games. Yeah, they're going to have to throw the ball. Rush may have more chemistry with Tolbert than he does with even CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's got the shoulder. What if he goes out? What if he can't play? What if he lands on that shoulder again Sunday? I'm going to say hold on to him, depending on what you have on your roster.
I don't know. I went back and before I bid my $1 on Cooper Rush, I went back and looked. The numbers last year were not pretty. They were not pretty when this guy had. I think he had one good. I think he had a 3-touchdown game once in his life, and that's it. The rest was just
high school.
Could have been. Where did he go to high school? Oh. He's got a good quarterback name. If you never saw him play and just heard his name, you'd think like, oh, that's probably a good quarterback. Cooper Rush. Sounds good. All right, Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants. So you're going to hold him, 51 catches, 343 yards. It sticks out to me, 51 catches. That seems like a lot for 9 weeks of the NFL season. My gosh, that's a decent PPR guy. I'm not going to cut him. I'll hold.
He's sort of that guy, like an extended running back for the Giants. Like he's a dump off guy. That's why when you 51, 343, it's an average of about 6.5 yards a reception. It's not very good because they just dump it off to him. He's always short. I think they hope he can break one. He's not going to be a touchdown guy. You're seeing that with 2 touchdowns. His numbers are actually very similar to Jalen Tolbert's. All right, he's got more catches. Tolbert has more touchdowns. Oh, that they're almost the exact same guy there as far as numbers. I mean, almost the same thing I said for Tolbert. I think they're going to be trailing in most games. My problem's going to be this: sooner or later, Craig, Giants aren't starting Daniel Jones anymore. They're going to worry about that injury guarantee for next year. And they're going to move on, and they're going to start whoever, Chicken Cutlets there or whatever.
What do they have?
Tommy
DeVito.
He's
there still? Is he still?
He's still there, but he's technically the backup. Drew Lock would be the starter.
So I got to pick up Drew
But
Lock.
Either way, it's a mess. Oh yeah, get right on Drew Lock. Right on Lock.
$1. You pick him up. And look, I'm in bad shape. What do you want me to say? My team's in bad shape. That's it. It's a dynasty league. Nothing I can do. All right, this has been a big bust. Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. He probably going in, you would have thought he was the number 1 guy, but he's not. And Dobbs and Wicks and everybody else is getting targets. Man, I hate to cut this guy. I'll start with you, George, then I'll make my decision. You're going to hold or drop this guy?
Everything you said is true. He gets hurt all the time. They got 18,000 other receivers. Love can't stay healthy for more than a week. I mean, I don't want to cut him, but I'm not starting him. All right. Depends on what else I have on my roster. Let me put it this way. If a bye week came and I only had 2 running backs and I had to go out and claim somebody, yeah, and I knew I was a decent running back, Watson can go. He's not someone I'm dying to keep on my roster. So it's going to depend on roster construction here, but he is so disappointing, and I'm trying very hard not to start him every week because I'm getting tired of 2 receptions for 19 yards.
Horrible. Yeah. I'll probably hold, but I don't feel great about it. All right. Do you ever see that video on YouTube where they're playing that game, The World of Warcraft, whatever it is, and they're all sitting outside getting ready to go in, and then this guy Leroy Jenkins runs in and ruins the whole thing? You have to have seen this on YouTube. You ever see this? You know what I'm talking about?
I have not seen this.
Leroy Jenkins? Yeah, how about you, Sam? You know what I'm talking about? Or no, none of you guys know. Anyway, it's like it's like this really funny video where this guy just like ruins everything. And he just screams his own name, Leroy Jenkins. He's like, Leroy Jenkins. I feel like that about Dalton Schultz. He does nothing every single week, and I yell at him, and he does nothing again. How many players need to be out for Dalton Schultz to do something? Do they need to hit for him to be the only player on the field? Like, even Mark Andrews has come alive and has had a nice season at tight end. This is one of the biggest tight end busts of the season, and yet it's like I'm clicking this guy's name every week as like a backup tight end or keeping him on the roster. I mean, I guess I'm going to still hold this guy, but like, Stephon Diggs is out and Nico Collins is out, and they haven't had DeAndre Hopkins in years. Like, they have no one, and this guy still does nothing ever.
Survey says. No, I'm done. And I was a supporter of him early on. You already said it. He couldn't do anything when Diggs and Collins were out. Collins was taken off IR. So he's got that 3-week practice window. That started yesterday. So I assume he plays then, right, this week. Usually they don't do that. Unless you're the Cowboys. Then you take someone off the IR, put him in the practice window, and he still doesn't play. Great move, Dallas. So I assume he's going to play this week or next week at the latest here. If Schultz couldn't get it done with those guys, Collins and Diggs, on the IR, he's going to get it done now with Collins back. No, I'm moving on.
No.
Even if, by the way, I need a tight end, there'll be someone else on. He'll still be on the waiver wire if I need someone later on. No.
All right, he's gone. Now here's the embarrassing moment of the show. I've held Blake Corum for 10 weeks of the fantasy football season, and I'm still holding on to these 72 yards and 17 receiving yards. What am I doing? I feel like I need to go to intervention for Blake Corum. I probably should have cut this guy like 6 weeks ago, but he's a fantastic handcuff. I mean, George, no one else gets the ball on the Rams outside of Kyren Williams. No one. So I guess I'm just going to keep playing this game of like, just, you never know, wait and see. I'm holding. I'm still holding. I'm going to hold all the way through like week 17. It's going to be such an embarrassing thing for me at the end of the year.
I'd rather have Todd Gurley on my roster right now than Blake.
Oh,
all right. I mean, I moved on a while. I drafted him in a couple of leagues, but I moved on, I don't know, a month ago when it just wasn't happening. Only because, listen, you're talking about your favorite head coach, right? I mean, frankly, we know lies to us all the time. We all bought in earlier on that, okay, they're both going. Remember, Kyren Williams was going to return punts, and then Corbin was returning kicks. And you thought he'd play. He hasn't played. He just hasn't played. You know, and Kyren Williams is having an all-pro season. He's been great. You know, so I don't see that changing without an injury here. If you're holding on to him, you're doing it just, I don't want to say you're hoping for an injury. I don't think any of us hoped for an injury, but you're covering yourself in case he gets hurt. If you were a Kyren Williams guy, you had him on your team, I can understand holding on to him.
Right.
Handcuff.
I'm not even. Yeah.
Then
I'm not even a Kyren Williams guy. I'm just a sad, pathetic.
From the 8.9 fantasy points he has all season long.
So finally, this is the guy I cut last week because I had enough. So this is an easy drop for me. I had to do it. I thought, am I wrong here that Zamir White, I thought he scored last week. Am I crazy? He did not score a touchdown? I was so mad. I thought he scored, but I could be wrong. He did. Okay, yeah, 174 yards. So there it goes to show you. The week I cut him, he scores. But the thing is what I was thinking, George, was that if they traded Madison somehow, that maybe Zamir White would have got more carries at this point. But I'm a drop. I think Madison is getting what, like 70% of the work. Zamir White's just lucky to get in.
Now, keep in mind, he did have that touchdown last week. Craig, it came on 10 yards rushing, 6 carries for 10 yards.
There you go.
He fell into the end zone. All right, you did the right thing. Once again, another guy moved on from a couple of weeks ago. It's just not happening. I'm surprised. I thought he would have a decent year with the Raiders, but Madison's played better. The Raiders are another team that's just a mess. All right, they got to figure out their quarterback situation. They keep going from this guy to that guy to this guy. Is Ritter, Mitchell, they're all twos, right? Get a real quarterback in there. They don't have a quarterback on their roster. Oh, it's just going to hurt the running game. No thanks. I'll move on.
Yeah. For like 3 months, Jeremy Hellickson, he's in my league, this former pitcher, you know who he is. He just kept offering me Zamir White over and over and over. And I'm like, buddy, I don't want this guy. Like, I don't want him at all. And then I drafted him in my other league. The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5. for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, ready for a little daily fantasy conversation? Craig and George back with you on fantasy sports today. Isn't it kind of funny, George? I've been doing SportsGrid work for years. I've been doing, and you've been, by the way, with Fantasy Sports Network and doing FST for a long time. And we do dedicate each and every week some time to DFS. Isn't it funny though, with sports betting and props taking over so much, how distant the talk has been in daily fantasy on DraftKings and FanDuel? I felt like we used to devote maybe 2 hours of content to that, but so many people can kind of play the same thing with these player props that the amount of people who are playing daily fantasy, I mean, I'm going to guess if 3 years ago, 100 people, George, were playing DFS, maybe what would you say now? There are 30? Like 30, like a 70% drop. I don't have any data to back that up, by the way. I'm just guessing from the lack of people that I see on social media. Like, people aren't even talking about it that much anymore.
Well, you said the reason why. Why would I want to play against 100 other people in a contest when I can just do the same bet against the number, right?
Yeah.
And you can find think about everything that happened in the game Thursday night. You could have found a prop you liked, whether it was a reception prop, a receiving prop, an anytime touchdown. Why am I playing in a contest against 100 people? I understand you want to play in the millionaire contest. I do too. All right, we all want to play in the big one, see what happens here. But other than that, I mean, it takes a lot of time and dedication to get all the studying done. Yeah, I'm going to gamble. Now, if you're in a state that's where it's illegal, I understand. All right, so you got to do what you got to do. Right. But in New York, now that it's ever since New York became legal, which is during the pandemic, yeah, I've definitely gravitated more towards FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever it was, and get my number, do a little shopping around, and go that direction. And you and I, Craig, remember, you want to go back to the past? Remember when the daily people and the yearly people, fantasy wise, were fighting with each other?
I remember.
The daily. Oh my God, that made no sense to me. It's the same thing. One's daily, one's yearly, but they were actually brawling with each other about how daily's terrible and yearly's better and vice versa. It was like, oh my God, I thought it was all ridiculous. Funny, but ridiculous.
It's so true. And by the way, FanDuel, DraftKings do a great job of giving you all of these options, so I'm not against it at all. But it's so funny that the season-long people did win. I never would have thought that, but the season-long people did win that battle, I think, in baseball and in football too. I mean, because betting just has taken on a life of its own. All right, time to play a little buy or sell. All right, start off at quarterback. We got Brock Purdy of the 49ers coming off a bye. Weapons back for the most part. McCaffrey's a very big key, by the way, out of the backfield. I don't think that's talked about nearly enough. Mason was not catching passes out of the backfield. Really good matchup too, George, against Tampa Bay. They seem to score a lot, and they can't stop anyone. I'm a buy. Yeah, I'm a buy on Brock Purdy at 6,500. I think this is a really good price. I think he's, by the way, one of the better fantasy quarterbacks the rest of the season too. Some really good matchups.
I 1,000% agree with you. Great matchup. Tampa Bay can't stop anybody. You got McCaffrey back, so that helps the passing game. Both the fact that he can catch the ball because McCaffrey's back. Jennings is going to be back this week as well. Kittle, we know, is catching the ball. He's all of a sudden become a top tight end. Deebo Samuel, they had a bye last week, so everybody's healthy here.
Yeah.
Big time buy on Purdy. Absolutely.
Yeah, love that price. All right, so let's go to cheaper running backs and see if we can find one. Like, this is your typical flex running back 3 type. Pittsburgh Steelers this week. They have Jaylen Warren, 5,300. Oof, I don't know here. Like, even at a cheap price, George, doesn't it feel like we're seeing the best version of Najee Harris we've ever seen at this point? I think I'm going to sell here. I think I would rather just buy somebody even lower at 4,800, 4,900. And again, it's only because we're finally seeing Najee come alive here.
Once again, you and I are in agreement here. No, I'm not taking Warren. Najee Harris has come into his own, right? He has come into his own where he is that guy now. Be interested to see what they do to him. Warren's just not doing all that much. He'd have to fall into the end zone, right, to get the 6-point touchdown deodorant here. It could be a higher scoring game against Washington. Could be, although I don't really see it. I think it's going to be a medium scoring game. It is a big game, Pittsburgh, Washington. They are coming off the bye week, Pittsburgh. I just don't see it. I don't see the upside here. That's my problem, Craig. I understand you look at the pricing around 5,300. You can't do much with that, but Davis is there 55, might like him a little bit more. Bigsby, he's at 57, so you're paying $400 more, but I might like him a little bit more this week as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going to let you start off with the next one here. See if you can sell me or get me to not buy or buy on this one. Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears. I don't know what to make of this strange offense that they're running. It feels like the Fields offense again, where I don't know the play calling is right. I mean, it just seems strange. Like Caleb Williams got this big arm. You see him sometimes completing 50-yard passes, DJ Moore. Other times he's not even involved in the game. I think Odunze in the right system with this right quarterback, I think he's a nice keeper for the future. But how about for this week, 5,200?
Is it? I mean, it looks like Caleb is also not playing as well of late. Like maybe he's hit that rookie wall a little bit. You're up against New England, decent defense. Christian Gonzalez, who's a shutdown corner, but probably won't be on Odunze. He might see more of Keenan Allen and company there. I'm not gonna do it. I mean, sell. He's a sell for me. Mainly, you look on the board here, Craig. Once again, I mean, just a little quick look. I got Juwan Jennings at 5,100, a much better matchup where I think he could go off here as the number 2 wide receiver there. So I'll take him in a heartbeat here. So he's going to be. I probably would even go Quentin Johnson if I wouldn't even save more money and hope he gets that touchdown there. So I'm a sell here on it. I think Odunze has a bright future, mind you.
I do too,
but not this week.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with you. I'll ride with you on Odunze. All right. So look, the Kincaid season didn't happen the way that we thought it would with Josh Allen. I think that's probably fair to say. So it's like sort of like some good news, bad news for Buffalo this week. I don't know how things are affected, but Keon Coleman is going to be out this week, and he was one of the primary red zone targets for Buffalo. Wasn't really doing a lot other than catching touchdowns. He is out. Amari Cooper, George, you'll have to update me on the status of him. So I think that factors in. I know Shakir is always there. 4,900. Okay, still questionable. Thanks, Sam. 4,900 for Kincaid. Look, we got to call it what it is. I mean, going into the year, fantasy analysts like us, not us necessarily, but fantasy analysts said 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. That's not happening.
No. And maybe my most disappointing player that I was wrong on. I have a ticket on him, I think, for over 5.5 touchdowns, 6.5 touchdowns. That's not likely to happen. Although I still got time. Maybe I get lucky. Disappointing here. You look at the board. Here's the problem here. I think he could have a decent week this week against Indianapolis. Who else we taking? You're going to have to spend up. You want to go for Cade Otton, who I love, but you're going to have to spend up a little bit for him. McBride, Kittle, Kelsey, love all of them. So if you do want to save money, you may have to take someone like Kincaid.
Yeah, could be. All right, let's take a quick time out here on Fantasy Sports Today. Time to come back next with some bold predictions from George Kurtz and the SportsGrid 60. The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish, along with George Kurtz. It's time now to go through some of George's bold predictions for the week. Who will we focus on? The Giants running back, potentially, of the future, who looks good in the present, quarterback of the 49ers, a surprise wide receiver, and a running back that is hard to take down on the field. Let's turn it over to George for his bold predictions.
All right. Now, we've already talked about Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers a bunch in this show, right? And as much as we loved him in buy or sell, I think he goes off this week. The team is healthy. All right. They just had the bye week. They're getting McCaffrey back. I said McCaffrey may not have his full complement of snaps here, but him just being on the field and playing will help Purdy here. I think Craig said it earlier in the show where he thinks Purdy could be one of the top quarterbacks, fantasy quarterbacks the rest of the season. I agree. I think he's top 5, top 8 at worst the rest of the season here. I think he goes off on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 300-plus yards, 3 touchdowns there. A top fantasy quarterback performer. Not Burrow, but pretty close after that. Number 2. Boy, do we hate Germany. We have not forgiven this country for World War I and World War II. We're sending you the Giants and the Panthers. Good luck. Good luck trying to sell football, NFL football, with the Giants and the Panthers. They must be desperate for this. That being said, hey, Tyrone Tracy's taken the number 1 job from Singletary there. Right, he's been fantastic. I think he goes off against the Panthers this week. Then he goes to, I think the Giants know, got to run the football. Got to run the football. We can't keep asking Daniel Jones to do, things here that he just can't do. And the offensive line's just so-so. Tracy, over 100 yards he scores this week as well for the New York Giants. I think they probably win the game as well. Atlanta, they play New Orleans. Hard not to like everybody on Atlanta. New Orleans traded Marshawn Lattimore. Good for them. They're in salary cap hell next week. I think he brings $25 million dead cap. They're toast. So the secondary is weak is what I'm trying to point out here. Also, Drake London, he's got the hip pointer. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. But even if he does play, I don't think he's going to be at full strength. He'll play his full complement of snaps. Mooney's been great this year. I think he goes off on Sunday. Once again, 100 yards receiving, touchdown. I think it's at least 6 catches as well. So I'm thinking he gets over 20 fantasy points in this game. And 2 touchdowns wouldn't surprise me. Love Darnell Mooney this week as well. And listen, the Cowboys are a train wreck. They've gotten blasted 2 games, all 3 games at home. Barkley makes his first visit to Dallas since becoming a Philadelphia Eagle. Barkley's actually never won in Dallas. Go figure. With the Giants. You're starting Barkley anyway, but I think he goes, just like he did against the Giants when he returned there, I think he goes ballistic against the Cowboys this week. Your only worry with Barkley is Hurts stealing those touchdowns on the 1-yard line. As someone who has Barkley in a couple leagues, it is frustrating as all hell. But I think Barkley just goes bananas, and he's your number 1 running back this week.
All right, so there you go. Bold predictions from George as we close out the show. But guess what else we have to close out with? We got some predictions, of course, and a schedule to tell you all about. Before we do that, it's time now for the SportsGrid 60.
I'm going to go a little bit off the board here. I'll go to the NHL. The New York Islanders, they're putting Brent Sutter in their Hall of Fame. I'm an Islander fan. I watch Brent Sutter play. If you go watch Craig off screen here, he's giving me a little look. And I wonder if the look's because he doesn't even know who Brent Sutter is. And that's the problem. Okay? That's not the look he's giving me. He's giving me the why you took an NHL look here. I don't care because it can go towards other teams. I just don't like when teams do this, Craig, because they're trying to get a sellout that night. all right, because they're playing the San Jose Sharks. So teams do, the Yankees have done this too, the Mets, everybody does this, and they put someone in there, Hall of Fame, who doesn't deserve to be there. Brent Sutter was a nice player for the Islanders in the 80s. He's not that player. He's not a Hall of Fame for the organization, not a Hall of Fame for the NHL. It just annoys me when teams and organizations do this, Craig, when they put somebody in just to get a bigger gate.
Are people still watching the show after that? I'm not sure. But we only have a minute to go. So that's the good news. All right. I want to end the show with this. I don't give out picks. I don't say they're locks. I don't ever do that here on the show. Unless a team fires a coach. Giddy up this week, folks. This is your shot. It is always the most fun bet in sports. It's the coach fired game after. Take that team. This week it is the New Orleans Saints plus 3.5. Players inherently want to prove it was the coach's fault and not theirs. This is the gift that keeps on giving, folks. Take the Saints this week plus the 3.5 points. Show me a coach fired in college like Rice a couple of weeks ago. Take a look at what Rice did after that. I'll show you a winner in football. That'll do it for the show. Don't forget to catch the Bowden Blitz every Saturday morning right here on SportsGrid. Terry Bowden doing a great job talking college football. In addition to Ben Stevens, Kevin Walsh, and Joe Lisi, In-Game Live Game Day. And don't forget Scott Wetzel and the crew on In-Game Live Overtime. George, have a great rest of your week. See you next week.
Be good, everybody.
All right. Have a great week, and everyone. See you next week.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro.
3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.